Okay, let's talk about resilience. What if it wasn't just, about bouncing back from a tough time? What if it was about rising up with real intention? Well, today, we're diving into the incredible story of Neo Dongwana. She's a leader whose life gives us some really powerful lessons on building strength, leading with integrity, and honestly, just crafting a life that feels like your own. So yeah, let's get right into it.
So, right at the heart of Neo's story is this idea that resilience is kind of like a superpower. But, and this is the key part, it's not about just passively surviving whatever life throws at you. No way. The way she sees it, it's this active, really intentional thing. It's about rising with purpose, leading with empathy, and really taking the reins of your own story.
So you have to wonder, right? Where does this kind of deep strength even come from? Well, to really get a handle on Neo Dongwana's resilience, we actually have to go way back to the source. And that source was a secret, a double life she led as a kid in Masuro.
I mean, just look at this contrast. It's so stark, it's almost hard to believe. During the day, she's a totally normal student, going to school, hanging out with friends. But at night, her home was a political safe house. We're talking hand grenades in the wardrobe and the constant threat of being bombed. This was her actual reality. And you can see how that kind of environment became this crucible, really, that forged her incredible strength and taught her to be discerning from a super young age.
Okay, so that resilience, the stuff that was forged in her childhood, well, it was going to get tested again and again throughout her professional life. And one of the very first big tests didn't happen in a safe house. Nope. It came in the form of a really crushing academic failure. So for anyone who knows anything about accounting, the Chartered Accountant Board exam, that's the big one. It's the mountain you have to climb. Just imagine the pressure. All those years of hard work, all leading up to this one thing. And she failed. Not just one part, she failed both. This was the kind of moment that could have just completely shattered her career before it even got off the ground.
But this is where you really see her incredible mindset kick in. She has this concept she calls her pity party. And I love this because she gives herself that moment to feel the disappointment, which is so important, right? But, and this is key, it's just a moment. The real magic happens in what comes next, that conscious choice to stand up, brush it off, and get on with life. The lesson here is so huge. It's not about never falling down. It's all about getting really good at getting back up.
And the result of that decision? It's pretty staggering, honestly. When she took the exam a second time, she didn't just pass. She placed 7th in the entire country. She literally went from what she called starting in the mud to walking on water. It's just such a powerful example of how a huge setback can actually be the setup for an even bigger comeback.
So as you can imagine, this ability to navigate these super high-pressure situations, it directly shaped her whole philosophy on leadership, especially when it came to dealing with the, let's face it, complex and sometimes tricky dynamics of a boardroom.
Her core idea here is all about walking this really fine line. Neo is super clear on this. Yeah, you need to be friendly, you need to collaborate, you need to create a positive vibe, but, and this is a big but, you can't be friends with the management you're supposed to be overseeing. That professional distance, she says, is like your armor. It's the only thing that lets you stay objective and, when the time comes, hold people accountable without flinching.
And she gives this perfect, sharp example to make her point. Let's say the CFO lends his fancy holiday house to the chair of the audit committee. Okay, fine, but now, what happens when that CFO messes up and needs to be called to account? All of a sudden, everyone's tiptoeing around the issue. Accountability just evaporates. It's such a clear illustration of why those boundaries aren't about being unfriendly. They're absolutely critical for things to be run ethically.
But the biggest test of her resilience, it wasn't going to be in an exam room or a boardroom. No, it came in the form of a deeply personal crisis, one that forced her to make a choice that would change, well, everything. And it really makes you think about this powerful question, doesn't it? Because as Neo found out the hard way, if you don't make the tough choices yourself, life has a funny way of stepping in and making them for you. And usually the consequences are pretty dramatic and not at all what you'd expect. Just look at this timeline. It shows this just relentless series of events that pushed her right to the edge. First, she survives a huge 12-hour operation and has to go through the grueling process of learning how to walk again. Then, what does she do? She jumps right back into her fast-paced career. Then, her second child is born prematurely, which is incredibly stressful. And all that stress triggers a massive health relapse. Suddenly, her health, her family, and her career were all on this terrible collision course.
So, in that critical moment,
she made what might be the bravest choice of her life. She realized something's gotta give, and she chose her child and she chose her own life. She walked away from a huge partner role at a major firm. I mean, that is the ultimate act of self-leadership right there. She completely redefined success for herself, on her own terms, not the ones that society or her career had laid out for her.
So all of these experiences, her resilience, her views on leadership, these huge life-changing choices, they all come together in one final, powerful lesson. And honestly, it's a piece of wisdom that I think can resonate with every single one of us, no matter what our own journey looks like.
And this is her ultimate advice. You don't need some big, fancy title. You don't need a global stage to make a real difference. Real impact, she says, starts right where you are. It's about being excellent, being influential in your own little corner of the world, and just doing what you can with what you've got for right now.
And so, we're going to end by turning that amazing wisdom back to you. After hearing about her incredible journey, this story of resilience and living with intention, what's the one thing in your corner? In your job, with your family, in your community. What's one thing you can influence for the better, starting today?